do enjoy my company this morning. Something you may not be enjoying so much this morning, it has to be said, is, of course, some of the protests that we've seen this week from Just Stop Oil. In fact, we've seen a raft of protesters being arrested over the course of the last week or two. Friday saw 8 more protesters and activists being held. 43 were arrested for allegedly blockading and smashing petrol pumps at service stations. This was on London's M25. Well, to talk about that, what is behind this, and how likely more protests are on the horizon, let's now talk to Claudia Penna Rojas, who is from Just Stop Oil. Morning, Claudia. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us here on TalkTV.
Good morning, Cristo. Thank you for having me.
So, Just Stop Oil, carrying out these protests, what do you actually want to achieve by vandalising petrol stations and the like?
Yeah, our demand is actually very simple. What we're asking for is that the government listen to the science and do the right and necessary thing by stopping all new fossil fuel projects in the UK.
Are you not concerned that by doing that, we're becoming less energy secure? We're seeing lots of people who are really affected by their bills at the moment and the green levies that are on their bills at the moment. We've seen a lot of energy insecurity by the fact that because we are phasing out so many of these fossil fuels here in the UK, that we've been turning to places like Russia. I think we're even looking at places like Saudi Arabia. So whilst it's not the best option, do you not acknowledge that by us having this ourselves, at least we're not going to have energy insecurity?
It's actually our reliance on fossil fuels that has got us into this situation in terms of this cost and living crisis and this energy insecurity. If the government had actually listened to scientists years ago and began that transition towards renewables, it would have given us a sense of security that fossil fuels never have and never will. It is our reliance on fossil fuels that has gotten us into the situation, and it is not, the answer is not to continue with it.
So what should we be doing instead?
So at the moment, what we're asking for is to stop new fossil fuel projects, right? We're not saying cut everything off right now. We know that that's not realistic. So if we stop investments, drilling, exploration into new fossil fuels, so we finish with what we've got, that gives us enough time to actually begin that transition. So it's about investing into greener forms of energy. It's about investing in, home insulation, better public transport. And essentially, it's about investing in people, investing in our future, instead of continuing to give money to an industry that is destroying our planet, that is destroying our future.
But you do know that we are probably decades away from having the technology to store renewable energy in a way that gives us the constant amount that is required to run the national grid.
So, I'm under no illusion that this is going to be simple, but we do have the solutions. We do have technology here. Obviously, it is a process, which is why we're asking to start the transition now. And I just want to make it clear, this is not just coming from me. This isn't just coming from us who are taking action. This advice, we're being told that we have to stop new fossil fuels. This is coming from the International
I understand
Energy
that, and I think you've made that point very articulately. But the point I'm saying is that the thing that you are pushing for, there are many scientists, many people with technological backgrounds who are working on trying to get this technology. I mean, my God, the person...
They're not getting the funding, they're not getting the backing to do this. Our issue is not a lack of solutions, it's a lack of political will. Our government is essentially in bed with the oil industry. There is this complete refusal to acknowledge the fact that actually if we continue down this path, then, we're sentencing people in the global south who are already experiencing the brunt of the climate crisis, and we are sentencing our children to death.
Are you pushing in any way for want of a better word, sort of carbon cleaning of some of these fuels?
Do you mean like sucking carbon out of
there are processes that are also being worked on.
So you're talking
carbon capture, essentially, I think it's called.
But earlier you were talking about technology, that we don't have the technology for renewables, right? Which actually, in many ways we do. But one thing that we don't have,
though. We don't have the
one
storage.
thing that we definitely don't have is the technology to carbon capture, So that is putting our fate in a technology that doesn't exist. That's a huge gamble. We're gambling on the fate of the whole planet on technology that we do not have.
We don't have the technology yet to store renewables either. We don't have that yet. We
have solutions, so we have
an energy expert
on the solutions. But what we know for sure is that if we continue down this path of fossil fuels, that is a death sentence.
I know, and you've said that, but what I'm saying is that the solution that you are pushing for does not exist.
Right. So again, I know it's not easy. We have said that. But what we know for sure, as I keep saying, is that if we continue down this path, that is a death sentence.
So why aren't you pushing for carbon capture as well as...
I'm saying that we shouldn't rely on it. I'm not saying...
Well, then we also shouldn't rely on renewables, because but your argument as to why... Sorry, if you let me finish. You've made the point about if we keep going down the path of fossil fuels. I get that point. But if you're saying that the reason that we can't rely on carbon capture is because the technology isn't there yet, well, the same reason applies as to why we can't rely on renewables, because the technology isn't there yet.
Comparable. And I just feel like, respectfully, you keep on looking at excuses why we can't make this transition happening and not looking at the
but it's the excuse you're using about carbon capture. It's the same excuse. It's the same excuse.
We absolutely have to. There are so many people suffering and dying right now. And as young people, we are absolutely terrified.
But I get that. But if the technology isn't there yet...
But our government is not putting the investment in that they need to. They keep instead pouring millions and millions of pounds weekly into the fossil fuel industry, who have openly said that they have more money than they know what to do with. That is disgraceful. That is a betrayal of people. That is a betrayal of people all over the world. It is a betrayal of the young people here in the UK.
But I don't think you quite get that. Quite a few people probably agree with your sentiment that actually we should be looking at cleaner forms of energy, that we should be cleaning up our air. I completely think that you've got people, but what you're doing by vandalising petrol stations and stopping people being able to go about their business is you're actually alienating people who would normally support you. And I don't understand how you can't see that.
I don't... Do you understand that we did not just one day wake up and decide to do this, okay? We're doing this because we're in an absolute emergency. We have been told by Sir David King, the former Chief Scientific Advisor for the UK, that what we do in the next 2 to 3 years is going to determine the future of humanity. For decades, people have been trying everything. They have been trying petitioning, writing to MPs, marches, and our government does not listen. They are not acting with the urgency that they need to. So this is why we're doing this, is because it's the only way to get the urgent change that we need. We don't want to be doing this. We would love to stop doing this. And all we're asking is for the government to make a meaningful...
We'll keep hold of you if that's all right, Claudia. When we come back, we'll talk some more about that, and we'll talk some more about what needs to be done and what else you're planning, if that's all right. So really appreciate that. We'll come back with Claudia Penna Rojas from Just Stop Oil in just a moment. It's Cristo here live from the Talk Radio studio. This is TalkTV, still joined live by Claudia Penna Rojas, who is from Just Stop Oil. You'd have seen that there have been protests in the last week, vandalising leading to some arrests, alleged vandalising of some of the petrol stations and petrol outlets around London's M25. Claudia, are you planning any more protests this week or in the next few weeks?
Well, we are yet to have any meaningful statements or commitments from the government to stop new fossil fuel projects, so unfortunately we will continue.
What I find a bit confusing, though, is that I feel like we're in the direction of travel that you want to happen. The government have announced the Contracts for Difference scheme, which I'm sure you're aware of, which has now become annual rather than every 2 years. And that is going to put the amount of money that is for renewable energy in the next 7 years at £90 billion. There are JP Morgan funds. There are, if you look at pretty much every single asset house in the world at the moment, you will find funds that are there to specifically fund the research and development that you want in renewables. And so a lot of people might be listening to this saying, well, why are you protesting when you're getting what you want? And within the next 7 years, there will be £90 billion on R&D into these things.
Okay, but what I will say, this is not about what we want, this is about what we need, what scientists are telling us we need. And you're talking about, you know, all these supposedly great things that the UK government are doing. And while I would love to sit here and celebrate, again, the International Energy Agency has said that if we are serious, if governments are serious about tackling the climate crisis, we can have no new fossil fuel developments. And this is in 2021.
We can't.
And currently, the UK government is looking to license over 40 new oil fields. You know, that's not climate leadership. We can't move to renewables until the technology is there. So something... So, but do you understand that continuing down this path is a death sentence?
You keep saying that, but until the alternative is ready...
But you keep looking at these excuses why we can't.
They're not excuses. There isn't an alternative ready.
We have so many solutions. It is not a lack of solutions.
Well, then tell me the solution. That we don't have the technology yet to store renewables.
We need to begin that
transition. We don't have the carbon capture technology yet. We're putting billions and billions and billions into trying to develop that technology so that we're ready when it's there. What do we do in the meantime?
Do you understand what is happening right now? Do you understand that people are already suffering and dying right now? You know,
which is why we're putting £90 billion
happening in Madagascar right now, which has been declared officially by the UN as a result of the climate crisis.
What would
East
you
Africa is
do instead?
A huge drought. In Chile, where my family come from, we have had an extreme drought for 13 years now, getting worse and worse, and we've seen lakes the size of Central Park in New York just dry up into almost nothing, and whole communities now don't have access to water. We
are putting billions.
Excuses.
It's not excuses; they're facts.
It's missing the fact that if we continue down this path, it is a death sentence, and you keep on looking at excuses why not to do it.
I don't know why these facts seem to upset you so much. They are facts. The fact is we're not ready with renewables yet.
What we know 100% is that if we continue down this path, then we are sentencing young people all over the world to death.
I know, and you keep saying that, but you haven't offered one alternative. I'm not. If you give me an alternative that is ready now, I will be right behind you.
Incredible people working on these alternatives who don't get the backing, who don't get the funding, because our government is in bed with the oil industry.
Annette told you how much funding is being given. 90 billion isn't enough.
And also, earlier you were talking about, you know, how starting drilling in the North Oil Sea will give us some kind of security that we don't have at the moment. That oil does not belong to us. It belongs to about 20 different companies who have licenses. It will not help our economy.
So would it help to buy it from Saudi Arabia or Russia then?
It won't help. It won't help us. It doesn't belong to us, and it won't help people with the energy crisis right now. We need the government to be investing in people instead of these companies who, again, have more money than they know what to do with.
They are investing in the tune of 90 billion, and they're also investing in private equity funds, and also you and I can invest in these. I know, because we need something in the meantime, Claudia.
But we have oil in the meantime. We have plenty of oil. Continuing to drill now will mean that we don't meet our net zero targets, which are already weak, and it will not help us with the problem right now. It will only keep us hooked to oil, to an industry that is destroying our planet.
We've got plenty of oil. Why is it so expensive then if oil is so plentiful?
You know how much oil companies are profiting from this cost of living crisis right now?
I do. They are profiting from it.
So why is our government continuing to give them millions of pounds?
Because we don't have the alternatives ready yet. I mean, we're kind of going around in circles, but we don't have the alternatives ready yet.
Give us a sense of security.
And we're investing. Okay, who funds you?
What do you mean, who funds us?
Who funds Just Stop Oil?
What do you mean? We don't have some huge funder that you're talking about.
Well, what about the Climate Emergency Fund based in Los Angeles? What's that about then?
Cristo, I'm not the person to talk to about funding. I'm here to talk about the climate crisis. I'm here to talk about why we need to move away from
you're representing Just Stop Oil, and it's being funded by
but why are we not asking the
Climate Emergency Fund? And I'm just wondering what their
why are we not talking about the urgency of our situation? Why are we not talking about the fact that if we don't move away from fossil fuels, our children will not have food?
We can talk about more than one thing.
But you haven't acknowledged the reality of our situation. You haven't acknowledged that the fact that if you want me
to, I don't know what you want from me. If you
children born today in the UK will not have enough food to eat. They will be fighting for survival by the time they are teenagers. That is the reality of our situation. If our government don't get a grip, don't take action and stop new fossil fuel projects.
And are you planning any protests, bearing in mind our net zero commitments, bearing in mind that our global carbon footprint is so low? Are you, it's a question I'm sure you've been asked before, but I'll ask it again. Are you planning any protests at the Chinese embassy, for instance?
I hate this whole, let's go to China, let's blame China.
They're massive carbon emitters.
They are, but the UK has gone through their industrial revolution. They have now reaped the rewards, right?
So that's enough.
Hold on. So while we absolutely have to acknowledge that, globally we have to do things, this is a global problem. It requires global solutions. There's no point pointing fingers and saying, oh, well, China's doing this, so let's not make an effort.
So it's a global problem, but there's no point in calling out global nations that are creating this problem.
If the UK government claim to be the climate leaders that they claim to be, they need to lead by example.
But you're pointing fingers at UK government, at motorists trying to get from A to B. It would just seem logical that China and India...
I'm in no way blaming motorists trying to get A to B.
Well, you tell that to someone trying to get their children to school, trying to get to work to earn a living. You can't because you vandalised a petrol station.
The children who won't have enough food to eat in a few decades because the government is refusing to act on the climate crisis.
Well, then you must be thrilled that there's £90 billion being put into it by 2030, if you're saying we've got decades.
I'm not thrilled because they're looking to licence over 40 new oil fields.
Because we need something in the meantime. I don't know what about that you're having trouble understanding.
But do you understand that, again, starting drilling now, it will take over a decade to come online. It's not going to help us with our current situation. All it's going to do is keep us hooked on the very thing that is destroying our future.
China produced almost two-thirds of the growth in emissions since 2000.
So do we.
Say that again?
China needs to do better. We all need to do better.
So why aren't you protesting at the Chinese embassy or the Indian embassy or any of the countries? You don't need to go to the countries, but then you're going to get your protest heard, and you might also have the support of people here in the UK, a country that is actually aiming for net zero, a country, and I take what you're saying, that you're not happy about the oil field investment, but at least we're actually doing something here, whereas those countries aren't doing nearly enough.
We need to lead by example. We need to do better.
But we are.
But we're not. Again, we keep licensing the oil fields, putting millions of pounds worth of investments into an industry that is killing.
Isn't it just easier to do this? Aren't you just choosing the easy option? It's easier just to
easy option
because you're inconveniencing British people. You're deciding to vandalise petrol stations here. That's just the easy option, isn't it?
Do you really think that's what we want to be doing?
Well, clearly it is.
It's not. No one wants to do this. Absolutely no one wants to, be risking their career, be risking their future, going to prison. No one wants to be inconveniencing people. But we are doing this because we have been left with no alternative, because for decades people have been trying everything else and the government need to listen, and we are in an emergency and we need an emergency response.
Okay. I just think that it would be wise that we had an alternative in place before you protest what's happening now, that's all. And it would seem logical to me and logical to anyone listening that that would be the chain of events.
We have alternatives. Our government are refusing to invest in those. They just continue to give money to an industry that is killing our future. And again, people are suffering right now. People are dying right now. And continuing on this path will only guarantee a death sentence for young people. That is the reality of the situation. So anything else is making excuses. Making
excuses. All right, Claudia Penna Rojas, thank you from Just Stop Oil. Good to talk to you. And for anyone who's listening, she just held up a sign saying new fossil fuels equal a death sentence. I haven't got time to read the tweets, but not very much support there. Lovely from Claudia to Claudia and David Bull as
Can
well.
I just say that she does not speak for all Claudias?
I mean,
Let me just get that out
but
there.
I think that the sentiment is there, but you would seem...